What's up, crypto junkies? Jay coming at you, Sweaty Jay coming at you with another video. Just coming back from the gym, actually. There was something I was looking at this morning, and I wanted to bring it up to you guys and converse with you really quick here, okay? I'm assuming that you're sitting on the other side of the screen, smiling, having a great epic day. So let's get into it. It's been a while since I actually talked about this too. And in the past, when I've talked about this topic, it didn't really get a wide understanding. And the reception is very much like, yes, I see what you're saying. I hate your face. So let's try it again, shall we? Maybe it'll make more sense this time. The conversation is about, is Bitcoin a Ponzi itself, a Ponzi scheme, right? And the issue with that is the statement Ponzi scheme has such a deep, usually negative connotation with people. So immediately when you hear that word, it hits you in a certain way and it triggers this whole linear timeline of events and stories and history from your past. And so when you hear it, it triggers you into a reaction. And the worse the experience in an MLM and a Ponzi scheme and something that went under, got shut down by the government, made you buy, 20 pounds of toilet paper every single month, depending on the depth and the hoard of that, usually that's what the reaction is based off of, right? The depth of the reaction. So anyway, I'm going to start off with my thoughts, which I usually don't do. I think I save that to the end for the most part, but I want to start with that in the beginning. I think all currencies, all monies, in a sense, are a Ponzi scheme, meaning that the more people that come in and the more assumed value that is given to it, the longer it lasts and everybody just goes along hunky-dory and it's okay. Now the mechanisms are different, and gosh, this thread is great because it really breaks a lot of that down and shows where people's mind is at and where people's thought process is at, which is why I love threads like this. It's a really well put together thread. I don't know this Kyle guy, but a ton of people because of this thread don't like this guy now. Maybe he was a Bitcoin maximalist and now he's not, or he's out of the group. I will say that the Bitcoin maximalist group is really finicky. So it's like the minute that you start talking this wider concept and wider idea outside of what they try and keep very tight and narrow isn't usually widely accepted. And I don't really understand why, is because if you're a futurist, if you want the best possible thing for humanity, and with how are we going to commerce together, Bitcoin, Schmitecoin, it really doesn't matter, does it? It shouldn't. It's all about the underlying fundamentals of what that represents. And so I think there's definitely a lot of people, 9 years in with Bitcoin that are maybe a little bit too glued to the idea and a little bit too emotionally attached to it versus what it stands for. It's basically saying Bitcoin by definition is a pyramid scheme, multi-level marketing scheme. Now, I get what a lot of people are going to say right now. Jay, no, it's not, because insert exact definition of Ponzi scheme here. There's like iterations to it and there's differences to it, right? And when I first got into crypto, I was all over a bunch of different pyramid schemes, right? Like BitConnect and a lot of these other things that we shouldn't talk about. And people judge me for still to this day. That's like the go-to buckshot response is like, yeah, but you promoted BitConnect. Somehow equating that to like, you're an idiot, you're worthless, you have no clue what you're talking about, which is very interesting and limiting at the same time to whoever's the one saying it, really, because they're not accepting that, one, life is a learning process, two, we go through this and we kind of get better as we go. We should learn from our past. Yes, we do make mistakes. Nobody's perfect, and we can forgive each other. Like, we all make mistakes and that's okay, and we can forgive each other. Call me crazy, but I just thought those were basic things that we had all going on, and agreed on, but I guess not. So anyway, when I came into this and I looked at BitConnect and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I was saying to myself, yeah, it's a Ponzi scheme, but I was saying to myself, like, this is no different than a dollar. This is no different than fiat. It's the same thing, but it's decentralized. So to split hairs, it essentially is like just a decentralized pyramid scheme in a lot of ways, right? It does require mass adoption, it does require more people to use it, and it does require trust. Now, the only few differences I'd say between fiat and crypto is that fiat has the history, it has the bias and the attention. And so if Bitcoin could get that, then I really see no reason why it wouldn't be, Bitcoin versus a fiat, right? The only difference is that fiat, there's no limited supply, and thermodynamics conversation, I think, is different, but it's essentially the same thing. And so I want to call your attention to a few comments. Okay, so Jameson Loop, he's huge in the crypto space, right? He's one of the OGs. What he's suggesting here is anyone who calls Bitcoin a pyramid scheme should then explain why every public traded asset is not a pyramid scheme as well. You guys should really read this thread. I'll have it underneath. And then that's when we start to get into yields. And this is where I start to lose a little bit of the conversation because I don't know that much about that aspect of, I guess you could say, the economic market, with yields and DCFs, derivatives, and that. I'm not that deep enough in it yet. I understand a lot of layers of economics, but not there yet. Here's what I want to bring your attention to. This actually jumped out at me. Okay, Ari Paul, I think there's a simpler way to justify $20 trillion plus valuations, offshore banking. To have $1 in judgment resistance, you need to own $1 in asset, right? That's how it works with offshore banking outside of the US. A lot of people don't know this because they've never traveled outside the US. But just to kind of add this in there, when you travel internationally, your credit score does not really matter. Your credit score only matters in the United States. What they're looking for internationally is portfolio and secured assets, right? So it's 100% value accrual to asset by definition. Digital gold argument is same, just with depreciation resistance. So what that means is that because of what's required for offshore banking, a basically 1-to-1 ratio, as the market grows, naturally that valuation becomes more and more of a reality. So Ryan jumps in. Would a judgment resistant stablecoin be an even better fit for the offshore crowd? And I actually think it wouldn't just be a benefit for the offshore crowd. I think it's going to be a benefit that feeds both sides of this thing, which both sides of futurists wanting more freedom and more sovereignty, and governments, and let's call it this shadow organization that wants a new world order, if you believe in that sort of thing. I think there is a happy medium that kind of serves both points. Then I think eventually getting off of a fiat currency altogether would actually be the most appropriate, and I totally see a path for us getting there too, by the way. Yes, question is stable to what though? Stable to US dollar? No. That's why Gemini and Tether are such a disaster, because they are essentially just a digital version of the US dollar. Like 100% to the T. They have the same scary reality to it, which is that there's no supply and demand model built into those. And a lot of those, especially with Gemini now, can freeze the asset, can change the wallet, can change the asset itself, lock down accounts, and null and void anything that they want, all in the name of catastrophe, right? Which, who decides that? Is there a board? Is it unbiased board that decides these things, and how is that implemented, and then how is that that board and the whole thing held accountable to just stick to catastrophe as it's written, right? Such a beautiful disaster. Stable to US dollar either relies on collateralization, not judgment resistant, or game theory mechanism that literally breaks down as value approaches meaningful percentage of the US dollar or sooner. Okay, so what that's essentially saying is that the US dollar would never work. It needs to be done to a commodity, which this is curious. I'm very curious about this, is why nobody's really tried to peg anything to work on a consensus model to gold or silver or a mainstream commodity. Gold is the only thing, and this is a little speculative, but amongst a big group of people, it is considered the only money. Everything else is considered a currency, like fiat would be considered a currency, okay? Yeah, so why not peg it to something like that? Okay, so wrong. A stable commodity-based coin or basket would still have to compete against the laws of scarcity, entropy, and thermodynamics, which all exist in Bitcoin's game mechanism. Extraction commodities from oil to copper or sustenance baskets all rely on well-priced energy. There's room here for a solution. Great argument though, but the core topic and what I started off with this, I don't want to rant too long, is it essentially a pyramid scheme, and it does fit a lot of the bill. And I guess it just depends on how generic you want to be with the definition of what a pyramid scheme is, or how much you want to sway because of bias and say, no, it doesn't fit this exact and this exact. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think to a degree it all does carry these pyramid and Ponzi-like effects, because the last one in does kind of get screwed in a lot of ways, and he gets screwed more than the guy who was in 20 years ago using these things, as well as it does have the effect of needing mass adoption, needing a ton of people for it to continue to operate and work. Like, let's look at a few realities with fiat right now, and then I'll wrap this up, is that right now, how it works is when they print the money, they don't just push trillions of liquid dollars into the market. They use that and then buy their own bonds. Now, because there's so many trillions of dollars of US fiat in the streets all worldwide, and because so many other currencies are pegged to it and are leveraged and judged against the US dollar being the main fiat, right? If China, for example, who holds trillions of dollars in bonds and trillions of dollars in our fiat, were to start shipping that back home to us, we would have hyperinflation. That's how that works. So it's that sensitive of a game that's being played because there isn't a scarcity model built in. We are vulnerable. The US is vulnerable to that, and China knows that. Interesting enough too, China's been using fiat, which is a very worthless currency in comparison to what they're getting for it. They're using a lot of the US bonds and treasury notes to go and pick up land. They're also on this mad rush this last 5 years, maybe even longer, to pick up land assets. So they are borrowing a country's money, and I almost think they know they're going to default, and when they default, they're scooping up land on the cheap. They're doing this in Africa. They're doing this through various parts of Asia. Malaysia, Forest Park is essentially all China owned. They're doing this through even a lot of American cities. California, LA, a lot of that's Chinese owned. I'm here in Asia, and I can speak firsthand that there is a ton of Chinese influence. In Jakarta, it's huge Chinese influence, which is in Indonesia. Singapore, huge China influence. So anyway, my point, going back to the topic, is that, yeah, I mean, I kind of think all these currencies are kind of a little pyramid scheme. I don't think that's a bad thing, though. I don't say it to like be insulting. I don't know. I guess you just got to kind of be open to it. But nonetheless, there's a thread here. This sub thread is good as well from this Francis. I like his thought process and a lot of this. But here's his summary of it. All currencies are pyramid schemes until there's only one left, which you can't dump on someone else for another currency, and it can finally be used for the purpose of money, a medium of exchange, store of economic value, and a unit of account. Summarizes it right there. It's pretty beautifully written, okay? I'll link to the thread. Read it if you like. Even if you have a strong bias against what I'm saying and feel quite triggered by what I'm saying, for the sake of being open and challenging yourself to hear another viewpoint, you might want to check this out and see, you know, might pick something up off it. Otherwise, it just further solidifies your bias, which is great anyways, right? So anyways, guys, that's all I got for you. The next iteration, I guess, of the whole pyramid scheme, multi-level marketing scheme conversation with Bitcoin. And these are core problems that the space still faces. I do think there's room for a stable-ish coin, if you want to call it that, to be used for commerce. I feel strongly about that, and I don't think that is Bitcoin because of the volatility and a few other reasons, but personal reasons. But anyway, that's it. If you're new to the channel and you like what we're doing here, click the subscribe button and hit the bell notification. That will not ensure that you see all of our videos at all, actually. But everyone else says it, and it's probably what you should do if you want the best chance of getting our latest content. And then, if you could, go ahead and like the video, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. Do you think these guys are way off? Do you think I'm way off? And it is 100% not a pyramid scheme. Does this piss you off? Does this irritate you? Or are you open to this, and do you agree? I'd love to hear your opinion and your viewpoint on this down in the comments section below. Feel free to share this around, retweet it, and repost it on social media to help us grow around, my friends. That's it. We'll see you soon in another video. Bye.